Okay, good evening, everybody. We're dedicating the shiur to Chayei Tzahal and the Am Yisrael kulo, wherever he is and where they are. And now we're nearing Parshat Yitro, which deals with the sorry, just a minute. Let's do the share. Sorry. Yeah, now it is.
No, I saw the share before.
Now you can see, right? You see?
Yeah, now, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to discuss the clear question that all the Meforshim have. Actually, not all of them, all the modern ones have, because the old ones, the medieval ones, didn't ask such questions. Rashi usually, when he has a problem with a word or with a smichut or with something that contradicts something that he knows from other place, so he asks a question. But here, the big question, good evening, Mr. Amino. The big question is, what is Yitro doing? What is he coming for? Good evening. Because we don't need him at all. We know about him from Parashat Shmot, and then Moshe comes from Eretz Midian to Eretz Mitzrayim, and from then on we never saw him, we never heard of him, and now he comes and he disappears. It's mamash like Veni Vidi Vici, that Vayishma Yitro, we have Perek Yudchet dedicated to Yitro. Yitro comes, and then at the end of the perek, he gives a piece of advice, which is unclear as well, because we don't know why didn't Moshe make it himself if it was reasonable. And at the end of the perek, וישלח משה את חותנו וילך לו אל ארצו, and immediately פרק י"ט, בחודש השלישי, ביוצאת בני ישראל מארץ מצרים, ביום הזה באו מדבר סיני. It seems as if the Torah needs the appearance of Yitro, a chapter before Matan Torah Kulo, to say something. And the basic thing that we can learn from Yitro is that we think that Matan Torah is something very unique to Am Yisrael, and not just unique to Am Yisrael, but uprooting Am Yisrael from its origins among the nations, because Am Yisrael is a part of the nations. He might be Bni Bechori Israel, that he is the firstborn, is more important, more significant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he is considered as one of the nations. And therefore, we a lot of times forget that when the Torah is given, the Torah doesn't uproot all the things that you have in common with the other nations, and gives you a different law, a different constitution, a different way of thinking, a different way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees you and expects you, etc. But the first floor, the first koma, the first stage is that the Torah is given to all of the nations. Okay? Therefore, that Chazal says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked out for other nations and they didn't want to receive the Torah, but usually it sounds as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks for some, candidate, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu finds Am Yisrael. And then the big question is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to the other candidates. And usually we answer because it says that Am Yisrael had no significance. Still, Am Yisrael was the only one to agree to receive the Torah, to get the Torah. But it says as well that HaKadosh Baruch Hu checks out for other nations because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested the Torah to affect all the world, not just Am Yisrael. And therefore we have a goy, a non-Jewish person that comes around Matan Torah, and the big machloket, Mechilta and Gemara in Tzvachim, whether Yitro came before Matan Torah or after Matan Torah, but I'm not going into this machloket this time because it doesn't matter. the very fact that the Torah depicted it as if Yitro came before Matan Torah and unifying one chapter, one perek, just for Yitro and his piece of advice, whatever it is, says that the first comma of Matan Torah, the first floor is universal. We see it in other meforshim that around Shavuot. They said, why was the Torah given just in the desert, not in Eretz Israel? Because we have so many mitzvot that are just connected to Eretz Israel. In Chutz La'aretz, you cannot fulfill half the mitzvot of the Torah. So why the Torah was given to Am Israel in Sinai, not in Eretz Israel? Okay, before Moshe sinned, there was no reason to give the Torah to him, not in Eretz Israel. So you cannot answer me because had it been given in Eretz Israel, it wouldn't have been possible to punish Moshe, because it was possible by then, because Moshe should go to Eretz Israel and then be given the Torah. But the Torah, Bedavka, is given outside. And we can elaborate it a lot, that we see that in Matan Torah was Zayin Sivan. And even though we celebrate Vav Besivan. So a lot of Meforshim asks why. Why do we say Matan Toratenu? It's not Matan Toratenu. Matan Toratenu was at Zayin. So some of them answer, the Magen Avraham, that Matan Torah, Chag Shavuot is in Vav, but is Yom Tov Sheni is Zayin. And to symbolize the Yom Tov Sheni and its significance, therefore, the real Matan Torah is in Yom Tov Sheni. So what does it mean? It means that Lichora, in Matan Torah, in terms of giving the Torah, the Ma'ala of Eretz Israel is secondary. And the main thing of Matan Torah is in Chutz La'aretz, Ke'ilu, okay? It was given abroad in the desert, and it was given in terms of time in Zayin, where it's Yom Tov Sheni, okay? So either in the location, Makom, or the timing, it's both in Chutz La'aretz, Ke'ilu. Desert, not Eretz Israel, and Zayin, not Vav, Yom Tov Sheni, Chutz La'aretz. Why is it? Because the Torah's goal, final goal, is to affect all the world. And the Torah starts from Yitro, who is a non-Jewish person, and he comes and gives a piece of advice in order to say that the Torah is not given before I do what I have to do. Okay? Just when Yitro disappears, now you can ask me, so why does it disappear at the end of the perek? That's another question, and a good question. But the Torah wants to show that even if you would say that Am Yisrael substitutes Umot HaOlam, and when being given the Torah, Am Yisrael is not just the firstborn, he is the only son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but you shouldn't neglect all the world after Matan Torah. You should remember that they are a part of the Matan Torah. They were asked to be given the Torah. They refused, but they were asked, and they came by their representative, Yitro, who tried all the Avodah Zarah in the world. He comes before Matan Torah to share all the world with some aspect of giving a piece of advice in order how to get the Torah. And afterwards, Am Yisrael can substitute and be instead of Umot HaOlam. But remember the beginning with a lot of Umot HaOlam. Now, let's discuss another thing, and then we'll go to the main thing. Look how many times the Torah writes, Choten Moshe. We know who is Yitro. How do we know? We know it from Parashat Shmot, as I mentioned before. We know that his daughter was Tzipora Eshet Moshe, and Moshe came to his father-in-law, stayed there years. He was Ro'eh, his shepherd, Perek Gimel, that Moshe took his sheep in order to go to the desert, and then he found HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Mount Sinai. And וישמע יתרו, כהן מדיין, חותן משה. So for the first time, maybe the Torah wants to recall, to remind us who Yitro is. Okay. את כל אשר עשה אלוהים מול משה ולישראל עמו, כי הוציא שם את ישראל ממצרים. And then again, ויקח יתרו, חותן משה, את ציפורה, אשת משה, אחר שילוחיה. ואת שני בניה, אשר שם אחד גרשון, שם אחד אליעזר, ויבוא יתרו, third time, his name mentioned, and again, the Torah doesn't just, it's not enough to write his name, but the Torah wants his name in this parasha is Yitro Choten Moshe. Everything is connecting Yitro with his son-in-law, Moshe. ובניו ואשתו אל משה. ויאמר אל משה.
But excuse me, maybe it's because every time he appears, he's got a different name, and we have to sort of figure it out. Well, oh yeah, Yitro this time, not Ruel or something else. So maybe it's just to remind us.
Okay, but how is it written in פרק ג'? ומשה היה רואה את צאן חותנו?
Okay,
It might be that it's חותנו. It might be that you're right. Just a minute, let's see. It might be that you're right, but even if you're right, one time would be enough, okay? So for the first time, even second time, okay. But the third time, it's too much. Okay, לא. משה היה רואה את צאן יתרו, חותנו כהן מדיין, okay? So even if you have the problem with that you're right, with all the פרק ב' issues at the end, that, which is Reuel, and what was his real name, Reuel or Yitro, here it's very clear that according to even Parashat Shmot, Yitro equals Reuel, okay? It's not a grandfather. Okay, so here it's clear, and if again, if the Torah wants to repeat one time, two times, okay, but the Torah does it like 5 times at least. Let's see. So we stopped with ויבוא יתרו חותן משה. It was the third time. ויאמר אל משה, I'm coming. No, אני חותנך יתרו בא אליך. Okay, you don't know who I am your father-in-law, 4th time. ויצא משה לקראת חותנו, וישתחו וישקלו, ויספר משה לחותנו, 6th time, ויחד יתרו, okay, it's only time, no, not only time, but ויחד יתרו, ויאמר יתרו, here he doesn't have any adjectives and any descriptions, ויקח יתרו חותן משה, עולה וזבחים לאלוקים, ויבוא אהרון בכל זקני ישראל, לאכול לחם עם חותן משה. So at least 8 times and even more. וירא חותן משה, ויאמר משה לחותנו, ויאמר חותן משה אליו. So I can go on and on and on and on, but I think it's very clear, okay? It's too much, too many times טעמים, and one time I said, I think I said it in the Hebrew Shiur, that חותן has 2, I would say, advantages or disadvantages. Why? Because you meet people either because they're your relatives and you cannot do anything about it. Your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, there are all the people surrounding you are just, they are just a part of you, okay? You are part of them, but you cannot do anything. You're a family. Your wife or your husband is somebody that you find. It's not your relative usually. It is just a meeting, shidduch, whatever, and then you find her or him. Choten has a complexity of 2 things. From the one side is כאילו your father, and you know that in הלכות כיבוד אב ואם, סימן רמ, סעיף כ"ד, the Shulchan Aruch deals with the חובה to be mechabed, to honor your father-in-law, like your father, because in some ways he has a way of kavod. Basically, you should not call him in his name. You should call him father or something like this. Some people find it ridiculous, and therefore he מוותר על הכבוד שלו, forgoes, and therefore you can call him, but basically he's like your father, okay? But the choten is not the up-down relation between me and my father or me and my son, daughter. No, it's the horizontal, okay? Horizontal or vertical, both of them, because I have a meeting with my wife. She's not a part of my family, basically, just became a part of my family. And the same thing happens with the relation with not my father. My father, it's a part of my family, but the father-in-law that comes. So from both sides, כאילו יתרו has a חסרון, has a disadvantages in his relation to Moshe. Because Tzipora, she's his wife, but she is not born as a part of his family. So she might be a very plain person. As we know, אשת כהן אוכלת בתרומה, but she's not, she might be Israeli, okay? She's not Kohenet, okay? And on the contrary, Kohenet, if she is married out to an Israel, so she doesn't eat in Truma, because she goes after the husband, but she's different, okay? She comes from a different family. So when Tzipora is different than Moshe, and her father, Yitro, is very, very different than Moshe, because he's not only his wife, he is the father of the wife, okay? So he's far away from the whole family, the most far distant person is the Chatan and his Mechutan, or the Choten, okay? Or you might say the Kala and her mother-in-law, okay? It's the same thing, but you understand, from the father and person and his brother, or person with his father, or person with his son, it's the same. It's one relation, and it's natural relation. With a wife, it's not natural, but it's just one relation. But with a father-in-law, it's two relations. It's one with a wife, and because of the wife, you bring a package deal as a father. So the Torah says here that the one that gives Moshe a piece of his advice is not his wife, is not his sons, because as we said a few weeks ago, we know that his son, one of his sons, was not Talmid Chochem at all, kanireh, okay? Gershom, we know that Yehonatan ben Gershom was in the story of Pesel Micha at the end of Sefer Shoftim. So who gave him the piece of advice? Just his father-in-law, the person who is the furthest הכי רחוק in the family. And again, this what I said at the beginning. You have here that being given a piece of advice. Don't listen just to the people around you, the people surrounding you. Listen to the furthest person. It can be your choten, okay, from the family. It can be a non-Jewish person. And don't think that he is far-fetched, he is mufka, he is not a part of the system. He cannot do and think of helping you because he's not a part of the system. On the contrary, just because he is not a part of the system, he can can be a part. There is a famous story. I think it was with Rav Kook and Hugo Bergman. Hugo Bergman was a big philosopher, and he wrote a lot of books. He was teaching in Hebrew U, and he wrote a lot of books of the basic philosophy. And he once met Rav Kook, and he told him, "I'm very jealous at you because you're religious and you can make tshuva easily. You know all the Rambam and you know all the Hilchot Tshuva. I am non-religious, and it's much more difficult to make a tshuva, even if I want." So Rav Kook told him, "You don't understand. It's mamash the contrary. Because I'm religious, it's much more difficult for me to make a tshuva. For you, you are pure. You are not a part of the system. Therefore, when coming to a real tshuva, for you, it's much easier because it's natural. For me, it might be that I learned 5 years ago Hilchot Tshuva, and therefore I remind now and want to fulfill it. But it's not natural to me. It doesn't come from my heart. So the same thing happens here. Listen to the people who are far away, who are not of the system, because they might give you the best piece of advice. Now let's go to the advice itself. The advice is very strange. After all the introduction, that it lasts about 12 psukim, half the perek, נכון? Yes, half the perek. So, ויהי ממחרת, וישב משה לשפוט את העם, ויעמוד העם על משה מן הבוקר עד הערב. So Moshe is exhausted because he has a lot of line of a big queue of candidates to be to the base din. וירא חותן משה את כל אשר הוא עושה לעם. ויאמר מה הדבר הזה אשר אתה עושה לעם? מדוע אתה יושב לבדיך וכל העם ניצב עליך מן בוקר עד ערב? So every modern interpreter asks, what did Moshe think before Yitro came? What is the big significance of Atzat Yitro that we need some goy to go from afar and give us a piece of advice? Everybody knows. So if Moshe was a megaloman and a very centralist, a person that cannot, sometimes you find at work, a person that cannot give work to others because everything has to go to him, okay. But we don't know that Moshe is like this. And even if Moshe is like this, so what would the piece of advice help? Because Moshe would say, okay, and do the same. He'll centralize everything around him. So what does the Torah want to say us? To tell us? וירא חותן משה את כל אשר הוא עושה לעם, ויאמר מה הדבר הזה אשר אתה עושה לעם, מדוע אתה יושב לבדיך וכל העם ניצב עליך מן בוקר עד ערב? ויאמר משה לחותנו, כי יבוא אלי העם לדרוש אלוהים, כי אין להם דבר בא אליי, ושפטתי בין איש ובין רעהו, והודעתי את חוקי האלוקים ואת תורותיו. So it's very weird, because it sees that here, the question here, Yitro didn't understand at all what Moshe was doing, simply didn't understand. He asks him first, what are you doing? Then in Pasuk Tetvav Tetzayin, Moshe answers, I'm judging. There is a long queue is for judging. Okay. ויאמר חותן משה in Pasuk י"ז, לא טוב הדבר אשר אתה עושה. It's too much. נבול, תיבול, גם אתה, גם העם הזה אשר עמך, כי כבד ממך הדבר לא תוכל לעשות לבדך. אתה שמע בקולי יעצך ויהיה אלוהים ממך, יהיה אתה לעם מול האלוהים. And then he says, ואתה תחזה מכל העם, אנשי חיל, יראי אלוקים, אנשי אמת, צאני בצע, etc. And you have a lot of hierarchy. And you know that when even if you equalize the system, the civil system of that, if you apply, you have Bet HaMishpat Shalom, and if it's a bigger suit, you have Bet HaMishpat HaMechuzi, or sometimes if you make an appeal, Ir'ur, so you have Bet HaMishpat HaMechuzi, and then you go to Bet HaMishpat HaElyon, okay? So you have three systems, and it's a question, where do we find the same thing in the halacha? Maybe we don't, maybe we do, but we know that the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says that the same thing happened in Lishkat HaGazit. There was a base din of 71, and there was a base din of 23, and some cases you shouldn't bring to the base din of 3, which is the lowest instant. You have to go to the 23 instance, because there, if it's a murder, let's say, so you like today you have to go to directly to Beit HaMishpat HaMechuzi, okay? You cannot go to the lowest level. So the same thing happens in halacha, and it comes from Atzat Yitro, because Yitro says that it's true that din pruta kedin mea, that any din of 100 shekels equals to 5 millions, but you have שרי אלפים, שרי מאות, שרי 50, שרי עשרות, just in case that they don't know how to do, so they'll bring it to you, okay? So again, what was the big chidush of Moshe here, of Yitro to Moshe here? Why didn't Moshe know it? And what was Yitro mechadesh? So I heard once a beautiful idea from a big lawyer that was he passed away, Yaakov Weinroth. He was a lawyer of Rosh HaMamshala, and he was a very famous lawyer, but very big Talmid Chochem. And he wrote an article saying that the discussion between Yitro and Moshe was based on a big philosophical discussion between Aristotle and Plato or Socrates. What was the discussion? We know that when bringing a case, you come with your case, you had chas v'shalom a teuna, a road accident, and you come to the judge and say, I drove 60 miles per hour and he came and he hit me from the side, etc. And he has to pay me. And he says the contrary. The judge or the judges don't have your case, they don't have a rule what to do in your case. They have just a general rule, general chukim, chukah or chukim. They have laws of driving, they have laws of ta'abura, they have laws of civil law, they have laws of all the system, and they look at the appropriate law, and they make השלכות, okay? What's the outcome of this law? The judge thinks to himself that in your case, it's very similar to what's written in that law, and therefore you should be paid, or you should be penalized, or he should be penalized because it's very similar to what's written in the law. What I mean is that never in the world, when you come to court, it's never an explicit law. It's never an explicit rule that is written in one of the laws. Tamid, in any case, you have to make a way of thinking, a comparison, or to say that it contradicts and it's to differentiate. You have to do חשיבה אנושית, a human thought in order to compare or to uncompare, to say that it's different. And it was a big question. As we know, all the big question of the philosophy came from the Greeks. And even Aristotle and Plato were arguing about the source from which a judge can judge if he doesn't have a rule. Because if he has an explicit rule, and the rule came from the public, from all the decisions of the people, or that all the people went to elect once in a few years, and their PMs in the Knesset, a member of parliament, MPs, decided for them that the rules would be like this, okay, that makes sense. But once you don't have this case in the rules, in the chukim, what gives you authority to decide, to understand, and to decide and to punish or to penalize a person if it's not written explicitly? So you have the problem of the big picture and how to make the details out of it. Okay? And Plato and Aristotle were arguing if it is chuki bichlal to do it. Moshe thought that I am the big picture. I am the macro. Okay? So I cannot give you to the option to judge you, the lower level of judging, because in any case, you won't have the explicit law. So I am very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am very close to the source of law. Therefore, I כאילו concludes of all the details and of all the options of the law. And therefore, each sentence, each verdict should come from me, because I am the only authority that can give you a verdict. Lower authorities cannot give you any verdict, okay? Cannot decide anything because they don't have a source where from to take it. It's too high for them. It's too general for them. They don't have a detailed option, a detailed rule, a detailed law from which to take the halacha, the verdict. Therefore, Moshe thought it's not that he didn't understand that it's too much of a burden for one person, but he said that philosophically, halachically, I cannot give others to make the detailed psak din, because they don't have an authority. And some people, they don't have, sometimes you come to a judge, he doesn't have an authority to do it, but he understands that you're right, so הוא מעגל פינות, כן? He says, okay, it's similar to this, it's similar to this, and he gives you, or that הוא דוחה את התביעה. Moshe Rabbeinu, since he is a man of truth, he's an איש האמת, he stands in front of Elohim, he understands that each shekel that I give you or I take from you should be by law, should be by truth, should be by Quranic truth, okay? And I cannot take or give you anything unless it has an explicit chok from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an explicit source of Torah saying. And since it cannot be in the world, because each sentence is different from, each case is different from the other, therefore, just come to me. Yitro tells him, no. Not only that it's a problem of burden, because you'll get worn out, but it's a problem. It's not a real philosophical problem. Each judge has his or her zchut to judge, and they can make comparisons, they can make similarities, or they can decide that it's similar, and it's fine, it's right. It's not brooking the deed. Don't think that just if you stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu so high, then you have the macro picture of everything, and then you have all the details. But even a lower instance, like Bet Mishpat Shalom, like Sarei Asarot, Sarei Chamishim, Sarei Meot, even if they are lower from you, and they didn't stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they are much more learned than you, and they just know much little than you are. That's what Chazal said, Moshe bedoro ki yiftach bedoro, okay? You have to understand, not just because they are your judges, because they're the authorities. The real thing of a Dayan, if he's honest and he doesn't lie to himself, so even if he doesn't know each and everything, he can make it by comparison, by ashva'a, or by non-ashva'a. And the same thing happens with Limud Torah. Some people think that in order to learn, to know and to decide and to judge, you have to know everything and learn, 30, 40, 50 years. Then you cover everything, all the sugyas and all the Torah. Just then you can give a Dvar Torah. And you find a lot of Talmidei Chachamim that are afraid, even though they learned years and years, they're afraid of giving a psak din or halacha, because it says, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe they have too much irat hora'ah. And one person came to Rav Yisrael Salanter, he became a Rav Kehilat, and he told him, I'm afraid, because people would come to judge, and I don't know a lot. I'm afraid that I don't know enough. So he told him, what do you think? Who would be the people to give the halacha? The people that don't think that they know enough. They are just veins, and they cannot give any dvar Torah. The only people who can give you halacha is the people that are afraid, and even though they decide. And the same thing happens here. That's what Yitro convinced Moshe. Yitro convinced Moshe that even if you're from a lower instance and you're not so high in the hierarchy, and you don't know all the Torah, and you didn't stand in front of Hashem, and you didn't hear all the sides and all the Torah that was given to Moshe Sinai. But even then, if you just learn the rules, the main things, you can, by human thought, by chokhmah enoshit, to bridge the gap and to skip on some things that you are ignorant and you don't know them, but by comparison, by smichut, by hekesh, by gzera shava, by kal vachomer, you can do it. And be'etzem, that's the first time in which we find that Moshe Rabbeinu sees himself basically like the Torah, but he cannot be the Torah shebe'al peh. He can be just the Torah bichtav. Therefore, Moshe understands, I am the source of all, and all the halachas, all the details come from me. I give it to them, but the flow just has to come from me. It cannot come from other people because they didn't stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's a mistake. That's why Moshe, the famous Gemara in Menachot, described Moshe coming to Pamalia Shel Mala and listen to Torah, and then he doesn't understand. Okay? And why he doesn't understand? Because they're discussing also Torah of Rabbi Akiva, and it's Torah shebe'al peh, Torah that Moshe never thought of. He knew that already, but he didn't know how to extract it. He just knew it because he stood in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he didn't know how to say it. He didn't know how to lehorid it from his great mind into earth. To tell other people. And then he hears Yoshua, and Moshe Rabbeinu sits and doesn't understand anything. Then, at the end, the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva is asked, where do you know it from? And then he answers from Moshe in Sinai. So Moshe is relaxed. Okay, it comes from him. What does it mean? It means that some people, they're so big and so clever and so stood in front of the real sun that they cannot understand the beings. They cannot understand they just hear the source. They just see the source. They don't understand how the details come and novea mize. Therefore, they need some lower people. Sarei alafim, sarei meot, sarei chamishim, and even sarei asarot. They will be far away from you. They won't have the kishronot like you. They won't be as learned as you are. But they know how to translate the big Torah that you feel, that you smell, that you breathe into a practical Torah that would be for the commons. So according to this, the discussion between Moshe and Yitro is not something about burden or not burden, because it's very clear that Moshe understood it, but it's a big philosophical question, whether a person should be centralized and should send, because it's really truth, Eloki, and you cannot be mistaken, because you steal money from one side if you're mistaken. So Moshe Rabbeinu is afraid, and therefore he wants to say, just me that stood in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know everything, therefore I can give you a deal. But no, Yitro tells him it's a mistake. And even now, when giving a Torah, you would be given just the rules. You would be given just the general klalim. Even if you see in the Torah not just the 10 commandments, but 613 mitzvot, you still have a lot of way to go. You have a lot of Torah shebe'al peh. You have a lot of things to extrapolate, to learn, to discuss from each tag of each letter in each word in each pasuk. And you just by giving it to Chachmei Torah, even if they are lower than you, and even if they are not learned as you are, יפתחו את זה, and you have much more, and after years and years and generation of חכמי התורה, the Torah would be a lot of Torah שבעל פה, and therefore it would be grow and grow. So that's why Yitro has to come before Matan Torah. We understood at the beginning that it's just a goy to give us a cosmopolitan stage of the Torah, and we understood that Moshe is far away to symbolize, Yitro is far away to symbolize a person that gives you a piece of advice. Listen to him because he is not a part of the system, therefore he might help you. And now we see that the Etzah itself is related to the development of Torah, that without this piece of Etzah, of advice, so the Torah would be very central, and we won't have all the development of it into details, into judges, into dayanim, into people, and therefore we need the Torah שבעל פה. So Yitro בעצם symbolizes to Moshe, Moshe, you are the Torah שבכתב, I symbolizes the significance of Torah שבעל פה. That's it for now. All the best. שבוע טוב, בשורות טובות.
Thank you.
תודה רבה.
Thank you. לילה טוב.
לילה טוב.